the same thing can be applied when people are looking for jobs, right? A data analyst, maybe call a data analyst, a business analyst, and sometimes even data scientist, and you see the job description, it's actually a data analyst, right? It's just, I guess it's whatever is in at that time or whatever catches the headlines is kind of, you can make up whatever titles you want.
Welcome back to the Insights by Design podcast. We're thrilled to be joined today by Nisar Ahmed. Nisar, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're fantastic. Thank you. Nisar is the lead decision scientist at CVS, the creator of the YouTube channel Business Intelligence, the host of the Data Nerd podcast, and a prolific data analytics instructor. But Nisar, for those who haven't come across you, would you mind just adding a little more context to that introduction?
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much sums it up, but just to add some more context, I have experience in analytics, spanning 20 years, but over the last 8 or some odd years, I've focused really on Tableau. That's when I started working in Tableau. That's where my career took a little bit of a different trajectory. And so I work in healthcare now, and over the last 6 years for CVS Health, I'm a lead decision scientist. But on the side, I also am an instructor. I teach 10-week certification programs to colleges across the country. And I also am a data coach for PH Data, where I do a lot of the coaching for Tableau. And then I started my YouTube channel, started off with some Tableau training. And now I also host the Data Nerd podcast.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And as you noted, you've really specialized in using Tableau for analytics, insights, data visualization. How do you personally balance the art and the science of creating effective analytics products like dashboards and visualizations?
That's kind of what drew me to Tableau, to be honest, or business intelligence or data visualization in general, is the balance of art and data. Before using Tableau was mostly just data. Growing up, I loved art, more with sketching or whatnot. You can see some art behind me, right? I didn't do that. I won't take credit for it, but I have an appreciation for art. And what happened was when I started using Tableau, I didn't pursue art in any sort of capacity after high school. Went into data, I loved it. When I started working in Tableau, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm left and right brain, both art and data. I can combine them together to create something that I love. And so when it comes to balancing both of those sides, I think in order to be good at data visualization, you have to balance it. I think what I tell my students is a lot of people get into business intelligence or Tableau or whatever tool you're using, and they think it's all technical. That's not going to make you a good developer. You have to implement some of the design best practices in art. Doesn't mean that just create something that looks nice and it's not effective. There's a balance that you need to play. So you have to hit that. You have to get that middle ground. And that's what I try to do. And that's what I try to teach. And a lot of that comes from experience.
Something I found interesting about your background is that you've also been a technical writer and a content specialist. So I wanted to ask, what do technical communicators need to know about data, and what do data professionals need to know about technical communication?
Yeah, so that technical writer bit happened, that was quite a while ago. And that was But I think back to that time, and I was like, that it would not exist anymore. You got ChatGPT now, it could do everything I did back then. Basically, my job then was I grew up in Canada. This job was in Canada, and I worked for a telecommunications company there. And basically, what I had to do was I worked with the call center that handled tech support calls or basic inquiries about their different phone products, from a technical standpoint. And I had to take their documents and kind of rewrite them so that they have something to refer to in their knowledge base. Now it would be much easier with AI and the advancement there. But the skills that I learned there were very, very valuable because I think in order to do your job correctly, and my job is I would say I'm more on the business analyst scale, right? Business analyst is what's their job? It's essentially to translate the technical data to the end users, to the stakeholders, to the business, and make them understand what the data and tell that story. Part of telling the story is verbal, part is written communication as well. And I think that's what I've been able to take from that role and apply as my career progressed.
Yeah, I think you're a great example of all three. You have the visual communication, the verbal communication, and the written communication. I think it's essential for data analysts to be proficient in all three of those areas to be really good at their jobs.
Yeah. I wouldn't say those all came to me naturally, though. It takes work. I'm an introvert. I'm not comfortable. I was never comfortable public speaking before, but I learned, I grew accustomed to it.
Well, now you speak publicly a lot. You've trained hundreds of students through General Assemblies, Ziplines Education, and as you noted, PH Data. And you speak to thousands of listeners through your podcast and your YouTube channel. What did your journey look like to help you become a confident communicator?
Yeah. So what happened was it really started with using Tableau. I think that really was the gateway for me to have that platform available to me. I'll tell you why. So I worked in utilities at that time for a company that did not have any business intelligence software. Well, actually, they had a Tableau license, but nobody was using it. They had reports, they had data, they had all over the place, right? So I was working with their call center. Basically, the call center supervisor, if he wanted to know, or he or she wanted to know the data for their reps, they had to pull their spreadsheets individually from different systems, put together the calculations, and figure out if it's good or bad, or if they're meeting the goals. So I was like, okay, you know what? I can make this. I could streamline all this, put this all together in Tableau, create a single data source, put a data visualization out. So then what I'm telling them the story they need to look at, because not everybody has the same level of data literacy. Someone may look at numbers and understand it. Someone may look at it and not know what they're looking at. What Tableau does, or what data visualization does, is put everyone on the even playing field. And so what that enabled me to do was showcase that, oh, look, I have something that I can communicate to them visually. And what happened then was other departments saw that and were like, oh, we want the same thing. And so I started training others. And that's where I started to become more accustomed to talking and training and communicating, which then enabled me to apply for a job at General Assembly as an instructor. I was thrown right into it at that point. To be honest, I had a lot of anxiety about it. I wasn't sure I can do it. Some of my childhood came back to me, and I was like, no, I can't do this public speaking. I'm scared. I can't do this. Probably for each class, it took me for every hour of teaching, it took me 3 to 4 hours of prep time initially, right? Just to get comfortable. But once you go through it, and then you see that people are appreciative of what you're teaching, and you actually sometimes you don't give yourself enough credit. And when you do that, you realize, okay, I know what I'm talking about, and I can teach others, and they're learning. Then a lot of that doubt that you may have starts to go away, and it becomes easier. And then now I'm at a point where I've done it so many times. There's always a little bit of nerves. I think that's normal. I think anyone who's talking will have a little bit of nerves, but I think a little bit is okay. It's good, but I don't worry about what other people think. And I think once you get into that mindset, then it allows you to do it effectively or do it better.
Can you lead us through some of your presentation failures that you've had? Maybe you haven't had many. I certainly have. What have you learned from having presentations not go well at times?
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway is that you don't know all the answers. So I've given a presentation where so this was before I started using Tableau. Okay. But I always remember this. I go back to this. There was somebody on my team, another analyst who left, okay, for another job, and they gave me his project. And he's like, okay, can you take this over and do and not present it, but like create the report for me. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So a meeting was called with the VP. The VP was very accustomed to working with his other analyst, and he would ask him questions that are very detailed. And obviously he had the background in it. He knew the data. I was very new to the data. I was able to produce it, but I wasn't really prepared, I would say. And the VP would ask me question after question. And I'm like, I don't know the answer. And what he told me was, you have to be more prepared. You can't go into this not knowing what you're talking about. It hit me hard because at first I was in denial. I was like, no, why should I know this? Like, this is not my data, but it is. I took ownership of it, and the moment it's I have it and I own it, I should be prepared for anything. I can't expect that people will know that I don't know the data, right? And so from that point on, I learned from that, and I said, always be prepared, but also you don't always have to know the answer. Not everybody knows everything. It's okay to say, get back to it. But I think some level of preparation is required, and especially taking into account who the stakeholders are.
I think that's key, is understanding who your stakeholders are, because you may be surprised that your chief marketing officer is very technical, or that your CTO is not very technical. And the type of information that you provide them to help them make the best decision will really vary depending on who's in the seat.
I think that's true not just for communication, but also in data visualization. You design it based on your stakeholders or your audience.
What are some of your best practices for creating a visualization that is going to be effective, and then maybe measuring and monitoring it to make sure that it is doing what you thought it would do?
When it comes to the design standpoint, I think there's a few things that I look at. What happens initially when people start working with it, and I did this as well when I first started in Tableau, they're like, I can do so much with this. Let me just put everything on there and I'll overload the dashboard with like 10 visuals and the rainbow of colors. What I learned is that's not the best way, because there's no focus. You need a focus, and you need to be to the point. White space is good. Only use color if there's a reason to use it, right? And the color has purpose too, right? Red, yellow, green usually mean things, right? Green is good, red is bad. Use that accordingly. Don't make something that's good red. It becomes a little tricky, especially for me. I work for CVS, and our color scheme is what? Red and black and white, right? So I have to use a lot of red. So you work around that a little bit. But I think when it comes to best practices, I say keep it, maybe no more than 4 to 5 visuals in a dashboard. Clean, white space is good. Neutral colors, only use colors where applicable, and then have color branding. The types of charts that you would select would be selected for a reason, right? Depends what you want to see. If you want to see something over time, you do a line chart. If you want to see categorical comparisons, you do a bar, right? And so there's a number of different things that you can do. Also, it's okay to steal ideas from others. Tableau Public is there for people to use. You want something, you search on there, you like something there, download it, see how they build it, and do it yourself. It's all good.
What are some unique data visualization challenges that you've seen in the health and wellness space?
Well, there's always privacy issues, right? When it comes to healthcare, right? HIPAA and whatnot. And so you have to be very careful. Some of the unique challenges I have is actually like, I do a lot of work at CVS, and a lot of most of the dashboards I've built are in healthcare. But I just can't share them with it. I can't show you guys, right? It's, and it's not just in healthcare. I think that's true for a lot of companies as well. But I think in healthcare, there's just so much data. It's overwhelming, the amount of data there is. But I think the challenge there is that a lot of the data is not clean. There's a lot of dirty data, a lot of data. Like, you cannot take any table that we have just as is. There's going to be some type of data cleaning, data cleansing. Now, do I do all of that? No. It's a full-time job, especially at CVS. We have data engineers to do that, but I understand what needs to be done there. But I think that's that challenge in particular in healthcare is there because it's just an overwhelming, the amount of data is overwhelming, but it's also a good thing. There's so much data at your disposal, right? Healthcare, especially CVS, right? We have pharmacy, we have insurance, we have both ends of the spectrum. We have provider, like we have so much data that we can work with.
So it's a blessing and it's a curse.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you handle data privacy when creating visualizations? Often stakeholders are asking for information and they kind of start with the end in mind, whether or not you want them to. But in healthcare, financial services, and depending if you're a global company, then you've got GDPR, and India has their own privacy rules. How do you handle data privacy when you're creating an analytics product?
Well, my analytics product primarily is Tableau, right? Data visualization, right? And so you have the ability in Tableau, right, to make certain types of data available to certain users, right? Like if you're publishing on Tableau server, you could set permissions to not have the data available for download, right? And so, but then there's also masking the data as well, right? So sometimes they want to see the data, but they're not really concerned about the name or the IDs or the people. They just want to have some type of identifier, right? So I think when it comes to data privacy, there are ways around it, and a lot of it has to do with kind of masking that data and still making it available for the purpose of what the users need it for.
Do you have data governance as part of your process as you're creating new products or reviewing products, or is this something that you just internally kind of know, like, oh, I probably shouldn't put this into the visualization?
Well, in CVS, the data governance, like they won't make the data available to me if I'm not supposed to use it. So they're very strict, especially in healthcare. And so everything that I have at my disposal is okay to use. If I'm not able to use anything, they won't make it available. And they're very strict on that. So the governance happens before I even get to it. And it works for me. I'm fortunate. I don't have to I don't have to double think about it or just see if I can use it or not.
An important issue in data governance is fraud detection and fraud waste. Could you tell us a little bit about how data analysts can help businesses avoid financial sinkholes like fraud waste?
Yeah, so I at CVS. So I work on the insurance side with Aetna, right? So Aetna's under the umbrella of CVS, and so some of the dashboards that I create or some of the analysis I do is on fraud, waste, and abuse, and providers, right? And so I think you can take it in so many different directions. There's it's very interesting to see whenever I talk to people and I tell them I work in fraud, waste, and abuse, and especially if they're providers or doctors themselves, they get a little worried. They're like, oh, what? Do you know something about me that I don't know? But to be honest, like I said, I don't have access to information that I shouldn't see anyway. So what I do is a lot, the trends, what type of fraud is being committed, where is it being committed, what type of specialties are committing it, are there certain regions of the country that have more do certain laws? Every state has different laws, right? And based on the laws, they may commit different types of fraud. But what we try to do with in fraud is try to forecast or predict when fraud is going to happen based on certain patterns. And that's where a lot of the savings comes from, is from the fraud prevention before it actually happens, not after the fact.
So being proactive and not just reactive.
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of folks getting into data analytics, when they hear projects like that, they might be like, oh no, that's data science. And then you mentioned that you're close on the business analyst side. There's kind of an alphabet soup of data titles that have vague descriptions of as to what they actually do. Data analyst, decision scientist, business analyst. There's not one definition of what each of those roles does at every company. How would you encourage your students to think about which roles to apply to as they try to break into data analytics?
I would say don't look at the job title. The job title can be very vague. So my official title is lead decision scientist. If I were to ask both of you, what's a lead decision scientist? What would you say? What's your first thought?
Statistician. That's what I'd think of.
Michael?
I find it kind of a confusing title because I associate decisions primarily with management, but then scientist with more statistics and experimental work. So I find it kind of a puzzling title that doesn't give me a clear image.
Yeah. So what I do as a lead decision scientist or as a decision scientist will be different than what another decision scientist does, right? So the title in itself does not describe what I do. Essentially what I am is, or what my title was before lead decision scientist was analytic consultant, right? They just didn't want to put the consulting, I think, use consultant. Consulting can be a little tricky because when you say, so you're a consultant, they think you don't work for the company, it's coming from the outside. So I think that was kind of behind that name change. But we have data scientists. And so I'm not a data scientist because I don't work on that, on the data science side and technology. I work on the analytics side. And so I think that's why they put that decision in front, because I produce dashboards and analysis for the decision makers. And so that's why I'm a decision scientist. So, the title is very vague, but I think the same thing can be applied when people are looking for jobs, right? A data analyst may be called a data analyst, a business analyst, and sometimes even data scientist. And you see the job description, it's actually a data analyst, right? It's just, I guess it's whatever is in at that time or whatever catches the headlines is kind of, you can make up whatever titles you want. But I think when you're applying for jobs, don't look at the title, look at the description and look at the key tools that are in there. But even then, the people put the kitchen sink in the job description, right? They want everything they want. Nobody knows everything. And so specialize in a few things, right? And if you're in the analyst space, I think when it comes to the top skills for an analyst, it would be SQL, some type of business intelligence software, whether it's Tableau or Power BI or whatever. Well, those are the top two. The third would, I think Excel is still out there. People, Excel is not dead. It's still being used, and I think there's still a purpose there. I know a lot of people who work in dashboard and they talk down to Excel. They're like, oh, they just want an output. They want an Excel output. And what's the point in you building a dashboard? I see it differently. I think the dashboard serves a different purpose than the Excel spreadsheets.
Identifying the purpose of working with your stakeholder is critical. I'm with you that, if there's memes all over LinkedIn of like a data analyst's worst day is when their dashboard gets exported to Excel. I'm like, well, you didn't do your work then up front with your stakeholder. You didn't understand what they needed. Maybe they just needed a report, but you felt like you had to build something in Tableau and they didn't want or need something in Tableau. And so you missed the mark. So I think it's actually a helpful sign and a healthy part of the product life cycle is when a product's used in a way that you didn't expect, and then you pivot and figure out how you can drive that value.
or maybe it's built the way that they want it, but they just want they just want to see the raw data, right? They want the details, and I think that's okay, right? Like my dashboard will have, for example, certain like monthly data. I've had different categories. You just want to see one particular month at what happened. You click on it, export data, and look at all the details, and that's okay. Yes, I can do it in Tableau too, but sometimes people want to kind of play around with it themselves. And if they want a dashboard, that's fine. If they don't, as long as what I'm providing them serves the purpose, and maybe the purpose is to tell them what direction they need to look at or what they need to look at.
So we talked a bit about breaking into data analytics, and as a mentor, I imagine that you also work with data analysts who are currently in the field, but trying to take their skills to the next level. What kinds of mentorship needs do data analysts have after they already have their foot in the door?
Yeah, so I see this a lot with people who are getting into data analytics. It's very competitive right now. Okay? What's going to set you apart from others? There's a couple of things. I think one is the networking. You're not networking just to find jobs. That's not the purpose. Don't think about networking just for when you need to find a job. You network to grow your network and to learn from others. That's part of it. And then if at some point you need a job, then at least then you may have a network to rely on, right? And so I think networking is a huge one, right? And sometimes people don't view that as being important. Once they get a job, they're like, I got the job, I don't have to worry about networking, but continue doing it. The other thing is, I think from a technical standpoint, for the most part, most people who from a technical capacity are pretty knowledgeable, right? And especially if you got the job. The soft skills, the communication, if you focus on that, that will set you apart from others, because not only will you be able to do the work and show what you can do, but you can communicate that to people. That is in art in itself. And that's a skill set that a lot of people overlook when it comes to data analysts.
That's great.
That's so helpful.
One of the best places to network is at conferences. And I saw you recently were at the Tableau conference.
Yeah.
What were some of your key takeaways?
So I think the focus is, like, from a technical standpoint, I think that, really getting into artificial intelligence, right? So Tableau's really pushing, Tableau Pulse and Einstein Copilot. And I think now, especially, you have to be fast to the market, right? You don't want to be left behind. You want to really be innovative and fast. And I think they're making strides. And my key takeaway is that I think Tableau is doing a lot with artificial intelligence. But my other takeaway, and a question a lot of people ask, is, does that mean it's going to take away our job? Like, is artificial intelligence replacing what we're going to do? And I heard something that I thought was interesting. And somebody said that it's like when the calculator was introduced. Was the need for math gone? No, it just made it better. Right? And so I think artificial intelligence will allow you to do your job better, and will just give you another skill set or tool. So that was one of my takeaways. The other one, again, like you said, networking, it's always good. Now that I have a good, especially on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I talk to people, I message them there, and, meet up in person. It's always nice.
So what skill set would you recommend for data analysts who aren't super comfortable with artificial intelligence tools, but want to level up their tech skills? What kinds of literacies do they need to develop behind the scenes?
For artificial intelligence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can say with like data visualization specifically, like you heard about at the Tableau conference.
Yeah. So I think what Tableau is trying to do is make it easier for you to use some of the tools that will do it for you, right? So they're packaging it for you. So I don't think if you're working in Tableau, I don't think you need to worry about like the technical side on how to come up with some of the data or the forecasting or the product itself. I think Tableau is really packaging a lot of that for you and just getting comfortable using what's available to you and practice with that. I have to admit, I have not explored it to the extent that I'm 100% comfortable with it yet. And I also have to start using it a little bit more as well. And it's still very new to me too. And so there's a lot I have to learn as well. I tell people, even though I work in Tableau every day and I teach people Tableau, there's always things that I learn, and part of teaching is learning as well.
Absolutely. So give these new tools a try and then keep on practicing like any other skill.
Exactly.
With all the tools rolling out, we just had Databricks and the Databricks Summit, they launched AI BI. And then, of course, all over LinkedIn is the immediate response like, oh, dashboards are dead. AI BI is the new thing. Regardless of the technology, what are some of the skills that you feel like are foundational for technical professionals, data or otherwise, to learn that really won't change regardless of the technology?
I think the ability to ask questions and being inquisitive, right? Learning the business. Those are all things. I think working as an analyst is not just about knowing how to do things technically. You also have to know the business or industry that you're in. Even like when I got into healthcare, I never worked in healthcare before, but I had to learn it. Who are your stakeholders? Who are you talking to? You're talking to the business. They know the business. If you can't speak that same language, then I don't know, that they're not going to listen to your message. They'll be like, oh, this guy knows the technical stuff, but he doesn't know healthcare. And so I think that won't go away, right? Is that something that you can always add value, is that business side. And then knowing what questions to ask and knowing how to approach it and then provide those solutions and tell that story. Up to this point, I don't think AI can tell the story for you necessarily. I mean, I've used ChatGPT and I've asked it questions and it's given me good answers, but I would never take those answers word for word and then provide those to my end users, because I don't know, I just feel, I don't know, it's not quite there for me yet. There's still some editing that has to be done. You take bits and pieces of it. And so I think as an analyst, I don't think it's going away. I think, like I said, I think it's just going to make your job easier, maybe make it faster for you to do some analysis, and maybe it may help you as well.
So you alluded a couple times that you're a mentor and you're a teacher, and you're well known for creating excellent tutorials on YouTube and host a great podcast, The Data Nerd. Between the two, YouTube and podcasting, which do you find the easiest and which do you find more challenging?
I'd say so I initially started with the training, Tableau training, and I came out with like 10 videos, introduction to Tableau, basically for people who are getting into it. I think that was harder for me to do because there's a lot of work that has to go into, what material am I going to teach? How am I going to teach it? The number of takes I had to do and editing was much more than the podcast. Now, podcast does require editing or whatnot, but the podcast is a conversation. We're having a conversation here, right? How much editing is involved? Yeah, there's some here and there. It's some things you may want to take out, maybe add some images, make the audio quality better. But I think putting the podcast together is easier. The hardest part is maybe getting the guest and thinking of the topics and the potential questions. But the training is where you need to really put more effort into it. but I enjoy both. I think they both serve different needs.
I love that. And Nisar, this has been a enlightening conversation. We really appreciate your time today. We just have one last hard-hitting question. You being originally from Canada, but now living in New York, Tim Hortons or Dunkin' Donuts?
Oh, Tim Hortons, 100%. But I've grown to like Dunkin' Donuts, but Tim Hortons, I don't know, maybe there's a bias there. I don't know. Have you guys had Tim Hortons?
Yes.
What do you
never
prefer?
have. I only pass it by in the highways and think, I need to go to Tim Hortons and see what this is all about. Someday I'll do it.
You got to try it one time. Maybe it's just a nostalgia for me, but I do prefer both to Starbucks. I'm not a Starbucks person.
Amen. We can agree on that. Well, Nisar, where can people find you?
Yeah, so business intelligence. So that, again, that's a play on words on my name, right? Business is spelled Biznis. NIS being my nickname growing up. A lot of friends called me Nisar. I said, business intelligence. So you could find me on YouTube at Business Intelligence, also on LinkedIn at Business Intelligence.
Perfect. Well, Nisar, again, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.